Well, Americans woke up to the news this morning that Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris, which we talked about in the last segment. Now, this is the bizarre and scripted way that Harris and the Obamas announced it.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi. You're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
Now, what is it about the Democrats treating America like a reality TV show? So is this the election game changer that Team Harris was hoping for? Well, let's take a look at some recent polling from our trusted pollsters at Rasmussen. Rasmussen's most recent poll has Trump up 7 points on Kamala Harris. Now, this fits within a polling landscape that has Trump up by single digits. But if you take a look at Real Clear Politics, most recent polls can see that one sticks out. Reuters has Harris up just by two, and Reuters is notoriously biased and not considered to be a top pollster. But the RCP average, as you can see, puts Trump up by nearly 2 points. Although a lot of these polls were taken before Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Rasmussen noted in defense of its polling that the betting odds have not changed. And joining us now to discuss the latest in presidential polling and some other fascinating polls is Rasmussen's head pollster, Martin Mitchell, to tell us about the latest. Look, tell us about your polling with Harris. When was this taken? Because, you know, a lot has changed in the last few days. So what time frame were we looking at?
These were just this week. I think our final night of results was Wednesday night. So there was a little bit of this media glow that she was getting, baked into these numbers. Mm-hmm. There wasn't the Obama endorsement yet. I do think she'll probably get a little bit of a bounce there, but our theory has always been that everybody says she's so unlikable. I think her and Joe Biden each have their traits that voters find unlikable, but in our numbers, they basically kind of hold the same. And so much of this election has been about whether you support Donald Trump and his MAGA platform or whether you support the elitist corporate oligarchy, right? Then I don't really think that the person at the front of the ticket matters that much. And that's exactly what our polls found. Now, there were some things that swung the race quite a bit. We haven't perennially had Trump up 8 to 10 points. We actually had him losing one poll back in November. And after the debate, we actually had a really big national likely voter poll that had Trump only up 3 on Joe Biden because the Democrats, rallied around their guy after he just got beaten terribly. But last week, after the assassination in the RNC, while Trump was getting a bounce, we had Trump up 8. And sure enough, Kamala's getting some positive press. She's down 7. So it's like exactly our hypothesis being proven. They kind of poll the same. But what is weird is like all this attention being given to the blue circles on that Real Clear polling aggregate. And there were some major polls that stood out and everybody said Biden was losing and now Kamala Harris is up. And I just don't buy it. I can't out and out call them liars. But it just looking at the internals, and have to give credit to an account on Twitter, Panda Tribune. They dug into the Reuters Ipsos crosstabs, and they showed that a week ago, when that poll had Trump winning by a point or two, compared to the one that had Kamala Harris up, there was a major swing in how conservative their independents were. It went like double digits from their 2020 vote from Trump to Biden. So, even if they weren't doing it intentionally, they had to see that in the crosstabs when they were looking to try and figure out, is this the right result to come out? Are we balancing this poll correctly? One of the things that we've been testing is whether our poll should be balanced to the 2020 results. And even when they do that, the last 2 times we did it, we had Trump up 3, and we had Trump up 8. So it doesn't change. Trump, in my opinion, is still winning quite big. Maybe he'll lose a point or two. I don't know, when the Obama endorsement feeds into everybody's psyche. But that's it. He hit 50% for the first time in the last two polls we run, and RFK is losing support. And Kamala Harris in this poll is polling like 29% with independents. You're not going to win an election with numbers like that.
And you just brought up RFK Jr., and I do want to get back to some of the numbers of those polls, but since you brought it up, I want to jump into that a little bit, because there was some news out there today speculating that RFK Jr. might drop out of the race. However, sources very, very close to RFK Jr. tell me that it's absolutely not happening, and the speculation is fake news. I actually saw correspondence with Bobby Kennedy himself, Jr., saying that was fake news. So here's how the Washington Times' Paul Berdard put it. He says that Trump still leads 50-43 with no Harris bump. When the third-party candidates were included in Rasmussen's poll, your poll, questioning Trump catches 7-point lead over Harris at 49-42. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lost half of his support, dropping to 4% from 8%. So in Harris versus Trump and factoring in RFK Jr., how much, I guess my question is, how much is RFK pulling from Trump? There's some thought on the right side that he's pulling more from Trump than he is Democrats. And I think that's why you're seeing this big push today to try to maybe encourage Bobby Kennedy to drop out and maybe endorse Donald Trump, because they have had some conversations, and he stayed at the RNC till almost the very end last week. He was still hanging around on Thursday.
I think there's two aspects to look at that kind of get confused. There's the aspect of, is Kennedy in the race or is he not? And then there's the aspect of, is he in the question or is he not, right? In a two-way matchup, we don't actually explicitly say Kennedy's name. And a lot of people will compare that to the multi-way matchup and think that it represents what looks like with Kennedy not in the race. I think you just have to look at the guy's policies. You know, he reads as a Democrat. It's mostly left-wing stuff with a few things that open-minded conservatives and independents are interested in. But who he polls best with is younger voters, independents, and to some extent minority voters. I think that they'll probably go their separate ways if Kennedy drops out. But the big important point is that he's just been losing support. Back in December, I think he was up in the teens, like 12, 16 points in a multi-way. He's down to like four points in a two-way. That's not a great direction. He's not going to win. I think a lot of people could have predicted that. If he ran as a Democrat, a lot of people would say, well, his platform is just impossible to coexist with the normal mainstream Democrat party. And on the he's just not right enough to challenge Donald Trump. So I think his question should be, if I want to influence the outcome of this election, would it be better if I stayed in, or would it be better if I threw my support behind Trump and got involved some way in the administration? And I think there's a lot of great ways he could be used. Hopefully those talks are happening.
I do too. Yeah, he might get a seat at the table, possibly in a Trump administration. That's definitely not going to be the case in a, it's hard to even say, Kamala Harris administration, which we're already kind of seeing now. She's been out there and Biden's nowhere to be seen. So we're getting a bit of a preview. Look, here, I want to go back to her numbers and what Reuters and the Ipsos poll tried to say. How do you get her being more favorable than Joe Biden or going up in points in a Trump matchup when through all of these years, through the entire Biden-Harris administration, she has polled less favorably than Joe Biden's, whose numbers were really low. She was even less. And that brings me to another poll that you have, and you can kind of fold this all in together. And what we have to keep our eye on is the election fraud, right? Because when they're doing this kind of polling, I knew that's when I thought, well, maybe it was too big to rig. But now that they're doing this favorable polling towards Harris, that is a signal that they are absolutely on track to rig it. You recently published a poll summary on X of one that you did at Rasmussen. You found that 28% of 2020 mail-in voters committed at least one form of fraud. 18% of voters received extra ballots in 2020. That's a lot, 18%. And 9% of voters told you all they weren't even citizens. This follows upon what you call the most terrifying poll result you've ever seen. You found that while just 7% were okay with cheating in elections to win, that, quote, more than a third of the elite 1% surveyed were fine. They were just absolutely fine with cheating. Mark, tell us about this.
Okay, you asked two questions. I'll try and knock the first one out. I think a lot of in the polling industry, Kamala Harris's bounce can be possibly explained most simply with confirmation bias being picked up by a Democrat favorable press. But I would never underestimate Democrat voters' ability to mentally change course incredibly rapidly. And I'll give you one quick example. We've been asking multiple times over the course of the last year or two, should Joe Biden be the candidate? Should he step out? And Democrats never really strongly wanted him out of the race. It was always like a high 40s number. I think we got to a majority once, right? But now, numbers coming out tomorrow, Joe Biden recently announced he would end his reelection campaign. Do you approve or disapprove, right? And Democrats, it's like overwhelmingly approve, like 84% of them, 54% strongly. So like just in 2 weeks, they're like, oh, okay, bye. Right? Don't let the door hit you on the way out. But that cheating thing is crazy. The headline that I don't have on that tweet is that 62 to 66% of voters are now concerned that the outcome of the 2024 election will be affected by cheating. I don't have time to go all the way into all those bullet points, but that we have polling to back all that up. Like that 2,500 person massive poll we did, 220 people told us they were not citizens or not sure. And then 90 couple percent of those people said they voted in the 2020 election. I mean, that's an astounding finding, and the industry isn't really focused on whether people that they ask if they're likely voters are citizens or not. That 28% of mail-in ballot numbers, that just came from simple questions we asked mail-in voters themselves. And they're like, oh, yeah, I voted in a different state. Oh, yeah, I filled out somebody. Now, the crazy trend to me, and I think the important takeaway, is that it was not focused in one party. It was actually a mix of independents, Republicans, Democrats, quite a good spread of demographics. I think the real takeaway is that elections are just a total unmitigated disaster in this country, and that when you have systems that are so loose and so uncontrolled and so porous, people are able to manipulate it without being uncovered. Although I will say the 20% of people in the swing states that said they got more than one mail-in ballot or a ballot for somebody that didn't live in their address, it was 30% of 18 to 39-year-olds, 29% of Hispanics, a bigger portion of black voters. So maybe there is some targeting there.
Yeah, maybe so. Look, we could go by state, but we're out of time. Kamala Harris is going to Georgia next week, so she's going to be there on Tuesday. It'll be interesting to follow up on Georgia, specifically after she makes her visit with some of your polling. And then, I almost feel like you could do a poll right now about what voters think. Was that really Joe Biden who gave the Oval Office address? And you could poll them, do you believe Joe Biden is dead or alive? Because that's the question I'm getting asked the most, and I'm seeing the most chatter on social media, and I bet no one else is going to do that poll. Thanks, Mark Mitchell.
We need a good news hook. Swing states are the right thing to look at, though. I do think a lot of the swings we're seeing nationally are probably California and New York voters who are just getting super enthused about a new candidate. Trump is, in our polling, winning in every single swing state in the multi-way matchup.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll also look at the other pollsters and what they're trying to say, that, the Dem pollsters, because that'll also tell us what they're going to try to do in the swing states. That's why I love what you all do. It gives me a good control group, right? It's my control poll. And I know what they're trying to do based on how it deviates from Rasmussen. Thank you so much, Mark Mitchell. Good to see you.